I saw my son sitting on a park bench with his 4-year-old daughter and 2 duffel bags at his feet, and I knew something had gone very wrong. It was a Tuesday morning. I had just come from a breakfast meeting downtown, still in my good coat, and I took the shortcut through Riverside Park the way I always do when the weather is decent. The leaves were starting to turn. It was the kind of morning that makes you feel like everything is fine in the world. Then I saw them. My son, 36 years old, sitting hunched forward with his elbows on his knees. My granddaughter, Lily, pressed against his side, clutching her stuffed rabbit. 2 bags. That was everything they had with them. I stopped walking. He looked up and saw me, and something in his face just crumpled. Not like a man crying. Like a man who had been holding himself together for days and finally ran out of strength to keep doing it. I sat down next to him. Lily climbed immediately into my lap. She smelled like the strawberry shampoo I keep at my house for her bath nights. "Grandma," she said quietly, "are we going to your house now?" I kissed the top of her head and looked at my son. "Tell me," I said. He told me. My son had been married to his wife for 7 years. I had never loved the match, but I had kept that to myself because he loved her, and that was what mattered. Her name was Celeste. She was 34, sharp-looking, the kind of woman who always seemed to be calculating something behind her eyes. Her mother, Judith, was worse. Judith ran a mid-sized property management company called Hartwell Realty Group out of Columbus, Ohio. She had built it herself after her divorce 20 years ago, and she never let anyone forget it. When my son married into that family, Judith made it clear, politely, always politely, that she considered him a temporary inconvenience. He was a structural engineer. Good salary, stable work, honest. None of that impressed Judith. What impressed Judith was last names and net worth, and who your grandfather was. My son's grandfather was a coal miner from West Virginia. So, there you have it. For 7 years he had tried. He had smiled at family dinners and ignored the comments and told me, whenever I asked, that things were fine. Things were fine. He said it so many times I started to hear the lie inside it. 3 months ago, Judith offered him a position at Hartwell, CFO. It came out of nowhere, and I told him to be careful. He said I was being paranoid. He said Judith was finally coming around. He said this was a good thing. He took the job. 6 weeks later, $340,000 was missing from a Hartwell operating account, and my son's name was on the transfer authorizations. Judith went to the police. She pressed charges. She told Celeste that she had trusted a man who was not worthy of this family and that she had the paperwork to prove it. Celeste filed for an emergency protective order. By the end of that week, my son had been removed from the house, stripped of his company access, and told by his own wife that she needed space to process the betrayal. He had nowhere to go. He had drained most of his personal savings when they bought the house, Celeste's name only on the deed, something Judith had insisted on for tax purposes. His accounts were frozen pending the investigation. He couldn't even pay for a motel room, so he had taken Lily. It was his custody day, and he had gone to the park because he didn't know what else to do. He didn't call me because he was ashamed. He was sitting there on that bench because he had convinced himself that he had failed so completely that even his mother couldn't help him. That broke my heart more than anything else. I let him finish. I didn't interrupt. I didn't ask questions yet. I just let him say all of it, every ugly piece of it, while Lily sat in my lap and watched the pigeons. When he was done, I was quiet for a moment. Then I said, "Pick up those bags. Here is what my son did not know about me. He knew I was retired. He knew I had worked in commercial real estate for most of my adult life, property acquisitions, mostly, for a regional investment firm based in Cincinnati. He knew I'd been good at it. He knew his father and I had lived comfortably. And after his father passed 11 years ago, I had continued to live comfortably on my own. What he did not know, what I had never felt the need to announce, was the extent of it. When I left my firm at 62, I had spent 31 years building relationships in that industry. I knew attorneys, forensic accountants, commercial lenders, and more than a few people who had been on the wrong end of exactly the kind of financial scheme that was now being used against my son. I sat on the board of a non-profit that worked with families navigating fraudulent financial charges. I had seen this pattern before. I knew what it looked like from the outside, and I knew what it looked like from the inside, and I knew the moment he told me about the transfer authorizations that my son had been set up as CFO at a company he had worked at for 6 weeks, does not have unilateral authority to move $340,000 out of an operating account. That's not how any functioning business works. There are dual authorization requirements. There are audit trails. There are board approvals above a certain threshold, unless someone wanted there to be a paper trail pointing in a specific direction, unless someone had spent weeks building that trail carefully, using a name they planned to sacrifice. My son didn't understand what had been done to him yet. He was too close to it, too ashamed, too beaten down. He thought he had made some catastrophic mistake, signed something he shouldn't have, failed to catch something in the accounts. He was still trying to figure out what he had done wrong. I already knew he hadn't done anything wrong. The first call I made was to an attorney named Warren, a man I had worked with on 3 separate commercial disputes over the years, and one of the best forensic fraud litigators in Ohio. I reached him before noon. I told him what I had. He told me what he needed. I told him I'd have it to him by end of week. Then I got to work. Lily settled in quickly at my house. Children are resilient in ways that humble me. She knew something was wrong with her daddy, but she also knew my house, knew where I kept the crayons, knew that I made the scrambled eggs the way she liked them, with the cheese melted in and not just on top. She slept in the guest room with her rabbit, and woke up asking for orange juice, and there was something in the normalcy of that. Orange juice, crayon drawings on my kitchen table, cartoons on Saturday morning, that kept my son from falling completely apart. He needed to see that she was okay. As long as she was okay, he could keep going. I gave him tasks. Small ones at first: pick up groceries, take Lily to the library, handle the calls to his engineering firm about his leave of absence. Keeping him moving was important. A man who sits still with that kind of shame will start to disappear into it. While he was moving, I was working. Warren's team pulled the Hartwell financial records through the discovery process attached to the fraud complaint, and what they found in those records was exactly what I had expected to find, and worse. The $340,000 transfer had originated from an internal request submitted through Hartwell's accounting software. My son's login credentials had been used, but the submission timestamp was on a Thursday evening at 7:14 p.m., and I had my son's phone records, which placed him at a parent-teacher conference at Lily's preschool from 6:45 to 8:30 that same evening. 14 people could confirm he was in that room. His cell phone pinged a tower 4 miles from the Hartwell offices the entire time. Someone had logged into the system using his credentials while he was physically somewhere else. More than that, Warren's forensic accountant traced the $340,000 through 2 intermediate accounts, both LLCs registered in Delaware, before it landed in an account connected to a property holding company. A property holding company whose registered agent was Judith's personal attorney. The money had never left Judith's control. She had stolen from her own company, framed her son-in-law for it, and used the criminal complaint to destroy his marriage and remove him from any potential claim on the marital assets, including the house that was, conveniently, in Celeste's name alone. It was a clean plan. It would have worked if my son had been alone. He wasn't alone. I want to say something here because I think it matters. I am 67 years old. I have grey hair. I drive a sensible car. I bring casseroles to sick neighbours, and I go to church on Sundays, and I know every pharmacist at my local CVS by name. People see a woman like me and they make assumptions. They think sweet old lady. They think harmless. They think no threat here. Judith had made that assumption. She had met me at weddings and holidays and school events for 7 years, and she had looked at me and seen exactly what she expected to see. She had never asked a single question about my professional background. She had never been curious. Why would she be? I was just the boy's mother, the coal miner's granddaughter. Temporary inconvenience number 2. That was her mistake. I do not say this with anger. I say it as a fact, the same way I would state any other fact. Her contempt for me was the thing that made her careless, and her carelessness was the thing that cost her everything. The turning point came at a Hartwell board meeting in the 3rd week of October. Hartwell Realty Group had 4 board members besides Judith. 2 of them I happened to know. One from a regional commercial real estate association I had chaired for 6 years. One from a charitable foundation where I had served as a trustee. I had not called in those relationships lightly, but I had made some quiet calls. I had shared what Warren's team had found. I had let the evidence speak. The board retained an independent auditor. 2 weeks later, that auditor presented findings to the full board. The Delaware LLCs. The holding company. The registered agent. The time-stamped discrepancy. All of it laid out in a 70-page report with exhibits. Judith had also, it emerged, been diverting management fees from 3 Hartwell properties for the better part of 18 months. The $340,000 was not the first time. It was just the first time she needed someone else's name on it, because the amounts had grown large enough to require explanation. The board voted to remove her from the company she had built. The criminal complaint against my son was withdrawn. His name was cleared through a formal letter from the Columbus City Attorney's Office. His engineering firm welcomed him back. The divorce proceedings, because Celeste did not fight them once the truth was known, concluded with a settlement that included a fair division of the marital assets, the house sold and proceeds split, and a shared custody arrangement for Lily that my son's attorney negotiated carefully and well. Judith hired 3 different lawyers over the following months. She settled the civil case brought by Hartwell's remaining board in January. The terms were not public, but Warren told me they were significant. I did not go to any of the proceedings. I did not need to. I had done my part. Here is what I remember from the morning it was over. My son came into my kitchen. It was early, not yet 7, and I was making coffee the way I always do. The old drip machine, not the pod thing he keeps trying to buy me. He had Lily on his hip. She was still in her pajamas, the ones with the little foxes on them. He stood in my kitchen doorway and he looked at me and he said, "Mom, how did you do all of that?" I poured him a cup of coffee and handed it to him. "I've been working for 40 years, I said. "Did you think I wasn't paying attention?" He laughed. It was the first real laugh I'd heard from him in months. Lily laughed too, without knowing why, just because her father was laughing. Just because her father was laughing, just because laughter is contagious when you're 4 years old, and everything is still simple. We sat at my kitchen table. the same table where she had coloured her crayon drawings, where we had eaten scrambled eggs with the cheese melted in, and we had breakfast together, and outside the window the Ohio sky was doing that particular grey thing it does in November, heavy and low, the kind of sky that feels like a held breath before the first snow. It was the best morning I can remember in a long time. I want to be careful about what I say here, because I think people sometimes tell stories like this and make them sound like the lesson is about revenge, about getting even, about winning. That's not what this is about. What this is about is knowing your own worth, knowing it quietly, not needing anyone else to confirm it, not waiting for permission. Judith underestimated my son. She thought he was just a man who had married into the wrong family, expendable, easily removed, no one who would be missed. She never considered that he had a mother. She never considered what that mother might be capable of, because she had never thought to ask. That's the thing about contempt. It makes you blind. My son is back in his own apartment now. Lily spends Thursday nights and every other weekend with him. I see her on Sundays usually. She still asks for the scrambled eggs. He calls me more than he used to. We talk about small things. Work, Lily, what's good at the farmer's market. Sometimes he asks me about my career, the way he never quite did before. I think he is starting to understand that his mother is a person, not just a category. That is one of the better things to come out of all of this. I am 67 years old. I have grey hair. I drive a sensible car. And I know exactly what I'm doing. If you've been sitting on a bench somewhere, holding everything together, feeling like no one is coming, I want you to hear this. Sometimes the people who love you are already on their way. They just don't make a lot of noise about it. Sometimes the most powerful thing in the room is something nobody thought to be afraid of. Don't give up on the people you love, and don't count out the ones who've been paying attention. I've fought a lot about what made all of this possible. Not the attorneys, not the forensic records, not the board contacts I had spent 30 years building. Those were tools. Tools don't do anything by themselves. What made it possible was something quieter than that. My son is a good man. He went into that marriage honestly. He took that CFO position because he wanted to prove himself to a woman who had already decided he wasn't worth proving anything to. He trusted when he should have questioned, and he stayed silent when he should have called me. None of that makes him foolish. It makes him human. He wanted to belong somewhere, and he paid for that wanting in the hardest way I've ever watched someone pay for anything. Judith is a capable woman. I want to say that plainly. She built a real company from nothing after a difficult divorce, and that takes a particular kind of determination that I actually respect. But somewhere along the way, the drive that built something good in her curdled into something else, into the belief that she was the only one in any room who truly understood how things worked, into contempt for anyone she had already categorized as lesser. That contempt made her reckless. She stopped checking her blind spots because she had decided there was nothing in them worth checking for. That is the thing I keep coming back to. Not the money, not the scheme, not the legal outcome, the blind spot. Every consequence Judith faced, and they were significant consequences, came directly from the choices she made. She chose to use my son as a shield. She chose to frame a man she had spent 7 years dismissing. She chose to never once ask who his mother was, what she had done, who she knew, what she understood. The universe did not punish her. She built her own punishment, brick by brick, out of her own certainty that she was the smartest person in any room she walked into. My son built something different without knowing he was building it. He built a mother who paid attention. He built 31 years of relationships maintained with honesty and genuine care. He built, through his own good character, a life in which the people around him wanted to help when it mattered. Warren didn't take my call because of money. He took it because of 15 years of trust. The board members didn't listen because I pressured them. They listened because I had never once given them a reason not to. Character is slow. It doesn't pay off in a week or a year. Sometimes it sits quietly for decades, invisible, looking for all the world like nothing at all. And then one Tuesday morning in October, it walks through a park and finds exactly the right bench at exactly the right moment. What I want you to take from this, if you take anything, is not that you need to be powerful to protect the people you love. You need to be steady. You need to show up. You need to spend your years building something real, even when no one is watching, even when it seems like it doesn't matter, even when the people across the table have already decided you don't count. Lily asked me once, a few months after everything settled, why her daddy cried in the park that day. I told her he was just very tired, and that sometimes being tired looks like crying, and that the important thing was that he got up off the bench. She thought about that for a second, then she asked for more orange juice. That's enough. Getting up off the bench is enough. The rest has a way of following.